All right. Welcome tonight to our Now Granted podcast. Thank you for joining us. Um, my name's Ryan, and I'm here with Kevin, and we're going to talk tonight about a couple things that are going on, around the country. Do you have anything that you wanted
All
to
right,
start
let's
off
do
with,
it.
Kevin?
I think what was really interesting, something that developed over the weekend, is the Jussie Smollett hoax, and I sort of knew it was BS from the beginning when it came out. The details of it were pretty. They sounded made up. They
Yeah.
just sounded, so stereotypical and exactly what the left would think of Trump supporters.
I haven't been following this as closely as I probably
Hmm,
should have been. Can you kind
okay.
of walk me through it a little bit?
Yeah, so Jussie Smollett, he's an actor on the show Empire. He um, reported that he was attacked by two two people in Chicago at 2 a.m. Um, by two Trump supporters who said this is MAGA country, and they said some homophobic things and some racist things towards him. They beat him up and tied a noose on him. They poured bleach on him. So he says.
Wow.
Um,
That's crazy.
yeah, and then there was a video of uh,
You're breaking up a little bit.
exactly how he planted. He, oh shoot, sorry.
No, it's okay.
That's exactly how. Okay. Um, he planned the attack to happen right in front of this security camera, and the noose that was around his neck, they traced it back to a purchase that was made by himself.
Oh man.
Um, yeah, and apparently he knows the two guys who jumped him. They actually work with him on the show. So it was very, very poorly planned on his part. I mean, if he, he, I mean, I told you this earlier, but for an actor, he played the victim very terribly.
Yeah, yeah, you were mentioning that. And then the other funny kind of headline that I've seen about this is he's the first American to scam a couple Nigerians.
Yeah, yeah,
Other than
yeah.
that,
And
I
it's
really don't know
another thing
anything.
is America is such a safe country for for gays and blacks that we have to hire Nigerians to do the you know the
Yeah.
hating, the homophobia and the racism.
Well, and what was the goal of that? Was there video of the incident or anything? Because
Yeah, there's video of it, but apparently it was just all planned.
so it was supposed to be a couple of racist, supposed African Americans. Like, what was the goal?
I I I'm not sure if he wanted it to. I didn't see the interviews he did, the follow up. By the way, looking back on those interviews, I saw clips of him. You can sort of tell he's lying, and you can just look at him with. So I think he might have mentioned that they were white. I might be wrong on that, but I
So
don't know
that
why he would pick two black guys. If I
Yeah,
mean, if he wanted to paint a narrative that it's racist white people that are attacking him, or the
yeah,
racist white people that are ruining this country, or something like that. I don't know why he would pick two black guys.
yeah, that's crazy.
Or maybe he thought it was just like really dark at night, and you wouldn't be able to see the race, or be able to tell. You would just see a shadow.
Well, it's just another instance of just terrible planning. Like you could have thought this one through a little bit better, and maybe a different result would have
Yeah,
happened.
no.
But
Also
thankfully,
heard
these
that
people are idiots.
this was. I heard that he did this because he had an initial plan that didn't work. He wrote a letter to himself that was supposed to be from I don't know, from someone. It was supposed to be like a death threat
Oh
from
man.
a Trump supporter, and it didn't get enough media attention. So I think he planned this so that he would get more attention.
Yeah. So, how do you think this would have been received if it was, if it wasn't found out that it was a hoax? Like, was it? Do you think this would have gained a lot of traction in the media? Or, like, was it? Because
Oh yeah,
I kind of came in
definitely.
at the end.
Yeah, I mean the narrative by the mainstream media already is, Trump is evil, Trump supporters are evil, um, they're violent, and this
Mm,
just plays right into that narrative.
gotcha. Yeah.
Mm.
It's just such a crazy story that there's so obviously there's still some instances of racism across the country, and every instance is horrible, but there's just so few that actually happen that these stars have to make them up to keep their jobs on these TV shows. And
Yeah, well, yeah. So apparently he was fired from the show because of this.
well, if if it weren't a hoax, he probably would have gotten a pay increase out of it. He would have been a huge star. So
Hmm.
it obviously in hindsight it wasn't a good gamble, but at the time it might have seemed like a pretty good option.
Yeah.
Do you think the rest of his
Yeah,
career's going to be ruined, or do you think he'll be able to recover from
oh,
this?
definitely. He's looking at 3 years of jail time.
Well,
I
that
mean,
yeah
and this is a pretty like serious. I mean, it's a felony, but also it's just like such a stupid,
yeah
stupid thing to do that the public is going to look very, not so good on him for this.
that's true. Um,
Mm.
yeah, it's just like I said, it's just such a crazy story. And then this story happens, and either the next week or the same week, Trump announces his initiative to end the persecution of homosexuals. And then that's received so terribly by the left. They're trying to poke holes in it as best they can. But do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I saw that they were, or at least the left media was trying to say that, oh, we're just trying to shame Iran for human rights. Um, what do you call it?
Violations.
Violation, yeah, violations, human rights violations.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not bad either. I mean, why shouldn't we be doing that?
Yeah, why?
Um,
It's one of those
but
instances where
that's
it's
the only like negative thing that they can spin this story as,
yeah. Well, the funny thing is, historically, he's the most pro, gay president
Yeah.
that we've ever
Yeah.
had.
Mm.
He came into office supporting gay marriage. Not even Obama
Yeah.
could claim that.
Yeah.
So I think that the Democrats know they've got a pretty tough time coming up in 2020, and they just can't even give him an inch.
Yeah. It's amazing how fast the culture has changed within the past not even 10 years.
Uh-huh. Uh,
Like even mainstream Democrats were against gay marriage, and they were even for building a wall.
yeah. Well,
It's
I
completely.
I think the wall thing is purely because of Trump. The reason why
Mhm.
they're digging their heels in on it. If he were a president, well, I guess that's kind of a catch-22, because if he were a different president, then he wouldn't be pushing for a wall. So, but they've paid verbal lip service to a wall for years, but obviously no president's really had the wherewithal to get it done the way that Trump has.
Yeah.
So how do you think this is all gonna play into 2020? Do you think that Trump's got a pretty good chance?
Yeah, I like we mentioned on the last podcast, if whether some of his supporters have soured based on his
Mm-hmm.
progress and keeping his word. I don't think that is the case. I think a lot of his base is still with him. Um, I don't know if he'll be getting any like new supporters from the center, but I think that there are some moderate Democrats that might be giving him a run for his money.
You think so? Who do you think's going to be?
I don't think that they will get elected though.
Yeah.
I think if someone like or just someone who's just popular like Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, even though they're not really moderate, they just have like the personality. And most people don't even look into the actual policies that they want to enact when they get into office. It's more of like it's a popularity contest kind of.
Yeah. Well, and the policies just shift so radically from the primary to the general election. You gotta run to the left for the primary, but then as soon as you get the nomination, you've gotta get as close to the middle as you can while still retaining your base support. So fortunately, Trump doesn't have that problem. He's not going to lose anybody along the way that the Democrats might. I don't know if you've been seeing it, but he's been coming out pretty hard on Bernie. Have you seen his new nickname
lately?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
So today I'm signed up with all the Republican and Democrat email services essentially. So I get Donald Trump this and Obama that all the time. So the emails I've been getting today have been Crazy Bernie from Trump. So that's gonna be his
I think he used it the last time around.
Did he? Yeah, it's a good nickname because it plays into the hair.
Yeah, it is.
So he looks pretty crazy and unkempt.
Wait to see. No, I can't wait to see the nicknames he'll come up with the rest of the candidates that are coming out.
Well, the nice thing is, he's going to be able to kind of govern off to the side, slowly get wall built, slowly work with North Korea, tighten up pressure on Iran. He's going to be able to keep the pressure up on China and, kind of do that off to the side. And then he can just come in and take pot shots at whatever candidate pops their head up a little bit higher. So right now Bernie raised I think $6 million in a day or something crazy like that the day after he announced. So Trump's going to come in and start taking pot shots at him with nicknames like Crazy Bernie and stuff. You'll notice with Elizabeth Warren, he kind of already took her out by forcing her into that whole DNA test thing. She doesn't really stand a chance since that happened. I think she's just running so that she can get money for her future Senate campaigns.
Yeah, definitely.
Because what most people don't realize is that when you donate money to a presidential candidate, when they drop out of the race, it's up to them to deal with the money. So she can shuffle the campaign funds she raised for president over to her Senate campaign. She can donate millions of it to the eventual winners campaign, to hopefully get some favors from them, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of these people that are running could be doing it just to campaign and raise money for another seat that they're looking to take.
Yeah, definitely.
Or, like I said, to curry favor with whoever eventually does get the nomination.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I'm thinking like Amy Klobuchar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she has a chance at all.
No, not a chance. What's the woman from Hawaii?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yep, Gabbard. I don't think she's really got much of a chance. I think that if she were to make it to the general, she's probably one of their stronger candidates just because she's got more traditional Democrat beliefs. She's actually against war and that sort of thing. But the problem is CNN and MSNBC are completely against her, and they're pretty much rallying their support around Kamala Harris at the moment.
Yeah.
Though she's been having some troubling headlines recently in the news. Well, number one, her grandmother or grandfather were slave owners in Jamaica.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not a great look for for a black person running in the United States to have to have such a close tie to slavery. Um,
Mhm.
and then her dad wrote some kind of op-ed. It looks like condemning her for the stereotypical pot smoking Jamaican.
Yeah, yeah.
From that interview that she did the other day.
Hmm.
But like I was saying, on the flip side, you see CNN giving her tons of airtime in that town hall that they had for her like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it just looks like at the moment she's kind of the darling of the uh, uh, left wing media.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
So like I said, as of
It,
right now, it looks
why
like
why do
she's
you
in the.
think that is?
Well, number one, it can't be Bernie or Joe because they're men, and the current brand of the Democrats is women. Um, she's also
Not white.
what? Yeah,
She's not white.
she's not white. She is black. But she's black and what is it, like Filipino? I think.
I
She's
don't
got
know.
some either Asian or Pacific Islander heritage as well. So she checks a lot of the different boxes as far as um, social justice points goes. So they kind of have to pick her as opposed to somebody like I said, other than Bernie or Biden or even Beto
Mhm.
O'Rourke. I mean, he just has no points. The other problem for Beto going forward is he's married to a woman who's going to inherit billions. Her family's got billions of dollars, which doesn't
Mhm.
play well for Democrats.
Yeah. Another thing about Kamala Harris, about the weed smoking, she did an interview for some radio show, and she said that she was smoking weed during college, and they asked her, "Oh, what kind of music were you listening to while you were smoking weed?" And she said, "Oh, I was listening to Tupac, of course, but she graduated college in the mid '80s, and Tupac didn't really start coming out with music until the '90s, so that obviously was a blatant lie on her part." And
Well,
also,
I've actually kind of got a different perspective on that. I haven't. I will admit I haven't gone back and listened to the whole thing, but from the clips that I've seen, it kind of sounded like two different parts of the interview. So in one part, she admitted to smoking weed in college, and then there was another part where they asked her what kind of music she was listening to as kind of a slightly different thing. So I don't think she was just outright lying. I think that she just kind of got confused. A song comes out 2 or 3 or 4 years apart back in the 80s or early 90s. Like you're just not going to remember. I can't fault someone for not knowing exactly the date when Tupac and Snoop Dogg showed up on the scene. Like I don't think she was just blatantly lying. I think she just got tripped up and said something that
I
was
see.
factually incorrect. And as much as I hate them doing that to Trump, I can't be upset when when they're trying to do it to somebody I
Mhm.
don't like. So
Yeah.
like I
Yeah,
said,
you're probably right. You probably know more about that interview than I did. I only just saw like one little clip of it.
yeah, I've mostly been reading about it, and you can't really tell anything from reading. I could look it up and we could actually just watch it
Mhm.
if you
Yeah,
wanted. I don't care. It
like the whole
doesn't.
interview.
Not the whole thing, but we could probably find the clip
Yeah.
that shows that
I
part.
don't care.
No,
I
that's
don't care
fine.
that much.
But sorry, were you trying to go somewhere with that? I know I kind of
Oh no, I was just
interrupted.
gonna also mention that she tweeted out something about Jussie Smollett when he first came out about
Mm.
um, his attack. She called it a modern day lynching, and now the reporters are asking her now that like the truth has come out, what does she has to say? What she has to say about that now? And she's kind of refusing to comment. She's saying, "Oh well, all the facts haven't come out yet," and I'm not gonna comment on that quite yet. But she
Yeah.
knows she's wrong. I'm sure she's not gonna say anything when he in fact does go to jail. And
Oh no, she's not ever going to say anything.
Mhm.
That was definitely a tactic to just get that reporter out of her face and then never answer that question again.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
I you know I think this is a really good sign. I think that a lot of people on the left have kind of bought into to some of the hoaxes that
Mhm.
have been committed against them over the last 3 years about Trump. You've got the stuff about him hating gays, which at every turn he just proves that that's not the case.
Mhm.
Um, and then you've got all this stuff about him being a racist. Um, and you base that off of what the biggest thing would be the whole Charlottesville controversy, which the news continues to report factually incorrect. He never said that there were good people on both sides of um, the Nazis and the Antifa. The Nazis versus Antifa. They're not good. He never said that there were good people on both sides of that. That nonsense. He was referring to the statue debate where some people wanted to keep Civil War statues and others wanted to trash them and get rid of them. So he was saying that there were good people on both sides of that debate, and then the media just takes that out of context and promotes it as him being a horrible racist. So that's why that's one of the biggest hoaxes about Trump that we still see the media reporting as facts.
Yeah, and another thing, when he first announced that he was running for president, the whole thing about the Mexicans and the rapists,
Yep.
he didn't actually call all Mexicans rapists. He was talking
No.
about, the ones that are coming in illegally. A lot of them are the women are getting raped at a high rate, and
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of the ones that
coyotes are
are coming
horrible.
in, the males at least, are have criminal backgrounds.
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, and there's just been so much, to as Trump would say, so much fake news regarding all of that. That now to see one of these, hoaxes being committed with the Jussie Smollett case, like I think people are going to start waking up a little bit. It's hard not to. What's the actress from Charmed? She had a lot of egg on her face because of her initial statements in regards to this. So she's having to kind of walk back a lot of the stuff she was saying, and this combined with the fake news from the Catholic high school kids a
Mhm.
couple weeks ago. It's I think that the mainstream media's just entire narrative about Trump is starting to fall apart. They were trying
Yeah.
to say that he was going to come into office and start a bunch of wars. He's the first president in my lifetime that I can really think of talking about ending wars. He's trying to end Korea, trying to end Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Yemen. Trying to get us out of all there.
Mhm.
So he's definitely not crazy and unhinged. He's not starting nuclear wars. He's not actually anti-LGBT. He's come in and probably done more, or at least the same amount as Obama in that regard. Um, and then the whole narrative about him being a racist is just falling apart too, because you
Yeah.
find out that half the stuff that he's been called out as a racist for is either just not true or worse, a complete hoax.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
but they're not going to let it go anytime soon, especially with the election coming up.
yeah. Well, and then the other problem is for them is the Mueller report supposedly going to come out in the next couple weeks, and
Mhm.
if he had anything, he would have already reported it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he had compelling evidence that Donald Trump is an agent of Russia, either wittingly or unwittingly, there'd be a press conference tomorrow. So the fact that it's taken so long, and the fact that the report's coming out in 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, it leads me to believe that the likelihood of there being any bombshells or anything crazy in it is next to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, it's such an important thing. If they had the evidence, they would have to report it already.
Yeah. What do you think about like all the instability within his cabinet and the people close to him, that they're going to jail or he's firing them? And
well, I mean, if you look at people going to jail around any president, there's always a ton. And if you go through and you dig this much into Hillary Clinton's business, you'd be seeing just as many people going to jail. The problem is the way that the Democrats have it set up. Nobody ever wants to look into their dirty business. But Trump, being who he was and pissing everybody off, it's a lot easier for everybody to be okay with looking into his stuff.
Mm.
And the stuff the Democrats get dinged for just isn't reported. How many people know that Barack Obama had some huge amount of illegal campaign contributions? Probably not many. Because they were talking about, I think it was like a couple $100,000 a while back with the whole Stormy Daniels case. The illegal campaign contributions or whatever, and Obama got fined for the exact same thing. Like, it's just such a double standard. I think people are starting to wake up to it a little bit more.
Yeah.
What is it like?
And when you point that out, you get accused of whataboutism.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's just like with climate change. It's getting colder, so there's climate change. It's getting hotter, so there's climate change. Well, I guess either way you win. You set it up so no matter what, you get to report it as there being climate change. But when I try to say that, that isn't the case, you tell me that weather isn't climate. But when it suits, their interests, they say that weather is climate.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the funny part about Trump's tweets about climate change is he's just saying the exact same stuff that they do when there's a hurricane or anything else, but the opposite. Because, I don't know if you remember, but there was like a 10-year drought of hurricanes. So we didn't have any to hit landfall in the United States, at least mainland United States, for like 10 years. So it was Katrina, and then it was dead till like 2015. And then all of a sudden we started getting hurricanes again, and the news was reporting it like, the first time that we've ever been struck by a hurricane. And claiming that these hurricanes are a sign that global warming and climate change are real. But then when it's really cold in the winter, that's not a sign because weather isn't climate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of I would say right-leaning people who would say, well, it's really cold. How can there be climate change? How can there be global warming if it's cold right now?
Yeah.
It's just a silly argument,
It's such a complicated issue that we're seemingly being lied to by people on both sides.
Yeah.
Anybody that tries to tell you that a computer model is anything but a pile of garbage is lying to you or misinformed themselves. We can't get a computer model to tell us what the weather's going to be like tomorrow. I don't think we have an understanding of the climate good enough to be able to tell what the climate's going to be in 100 years. And just, about how computer models work and the fact that you have to have a number to represent literally every aspect of the earth that affects the climate,
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to put that into a computer and have it spit out what's going to happen next year, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, the, error rates just go through the roof.
Yeah.
But that's not reported. The other thing that hasn't been reported is apparently 2018 was not the hottest year on record.
Oh, really?
It was only the fourth hottest year. So our temperatures are starting to stabilize seemingly.
Interesting.
Well, the other problem with that number is if you go and you look up what they mean by hottest year on record, basically it means that there's about a 30 to 40% chance that it was the hottest year on record, because there's no good way of determining the average global temperature. They've got estimates based on equations that I have no understanding of. So it's just funny to me that the news reads that and says hottest year on record when it's a 30% chance it was the hottest year on record. But the 33% chance for this year is bigger than the 32% chance that last year was the hottest year on record. So that's why 2017 was the hottest year as opposed to 2016. But now we get to 2018 and it's fourth. So seemingly getting better.
Mm-hmm. How long? That's still pretty.
It's
high.
Pretty
I mean,
close.
how many years are on record?
Since the 70s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be longer than that.
Well, we couldn't possibly know the temperature before then because we didn't have satellites. Mm-hmm. How do you determine global temperatures before you have a global measurement system?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking that sometimes when I watch the news, they'll say like, "Oh, it was the hottest day of it broke a record today, right?"
Well,
today was the hottest it's ever been on this day, and it goes back to records in like the 1890s or something.
Well, the problem is we don't have global records from the 1890s. We have.
Yeah. But I imagine there's some way to use those records from back then to create an average.
The issue is, especially the farther back you go, the more corrupted the data is, because they were taking it directly in the center of major metropolitan areas rather than out in the middle of nowhere. So there's a lot of sources of heat that actually disrupt the measurement process. So it's fine to use that data if you're the local news service and you're trying to compare it to what it was in 1890, because you're just trying to entertain people. But when you're doing actual science, you can't really use those sources and count them the same. You have to have special equations and different ways of factoring in where the temperature was taken, what kind of device was being used, because that's the other issue. Our thermometers aren't the same today as they were 150 years ago. So
yeah,
there's just a lot of different factors that they have to take in, and it's a seemingly easy question, but determining what the global temperature is a lot harder in practice. You can't just, the Earth doesn't have a mouth that you can open up and stick the thermometer underneath its tongue. So, and then, unfortunately, our bodies are a pretty constant temperature throughout. So we can stick, a thermometer underneath our tongue and get an average temperature for your body because of our circulatory system. The Earth doesn't really have that in the same way. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I think that Republicans are actually doing a pretty terrible job at with the whole climate change and environmental debate. I think I might have said it last week, but we can't squash the Green New Deal without having some kind of alternative from a conservative perspective on what we should be doing for the environment. Because we all agree that we should be spending money to take care of our natural resources. It's just, what should we be doing? Where should we be spending the money? And what should we be spending the money on? And I think Republicans could come up with an absolutely spectacular environmental plan and provide that as an alternative. Talk about Generation 4 nuclear reactors, start, implementing those across the country. We could talk about setting aside specific land to preserve, working with United States car manufacturers to increase gas mileage. As a conservative, we have a monetary incentive to get the cheapest, to get the most fuel efficiency possible. So there's a lot of things that Republicans could work with private industry and different people to have their own, environmental plan. But you can't just bash on this climate deal when, it's being purported as a problem that's going to literally kill everybody. So you go with the plan that's crazy and probably won't work when you think that you're going to die in 12 years, like they keep saying. But if there's no other alternative, that's the one you have to go with. And I think Republicans are just doing a terrible job of getting the messaging out there that we care about the environment too.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Republicans should definitely come out with something to show that they care about the environment, at least to appeal to the Green voters.
Yeah.
But the Green New Deal there's a lot of the details, and I don't know, because AOC, she said that the one that we saw was not the official version.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen the official version that came out?
So from my understanding, what happened was there was the bill that they've introduced into the houses of Congress that says it's not a bill, it's a non-binding resolution that basically just says that we want to work on these key areas. We want to work to fund them and get the government behind it. What I think you're referring to is an FAQ page, a frequently asked questions page that had some erroneous language on it. That's where you found the unwilling to work line and a few other things that were kind of crazy were from this frequently asked questions page that was taken down almost immediately. So what it seems like is those things were on the table, but they got taken off for the actual resolution, but not by whoever decided to make this FAQ. If that makes sense. So
the unwilling to work part was being considered, at least.
It definitely was being considered because it did show up on a webpage. So there was at least one person in the process that believed in it, or that thought it was a good enough idea to let it slip through onto this webpage. But it's not actually part of the resolution that they're putting out there. And it is scary to see that kind of stuff. The whole unwilling to work thing is obviously insane. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, I think that from a persuasion, from that kind of an angle, Republicans are losing really bad on it. The media has been putting out that there's a climate change problem for 2 decades, and we're just sitting here saying, nah, it's not a problem, nobody cares, when everybody else is saying that the world is burning. So
do you think that people really do care? I don't know if I care.
It's hard to tell what the average person thinks and believes, because I definitely am. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely in a very insulated and isolated community. So me and most of the people that I interact with on a daily basis don't think that it's a huge problem, but I think that there's a huge portion of people out there that do believe it's a problem, and I think it might be a little bit bigger than I realize. But who knows? Maybe there's more people like me than I thought.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it? Do you think that there's a lot of people that care or no?
I don't think there's people that care about it. I mean, I know that there are people that care about it, but
Mm-hmm.
not a significant amount.
Okay.
Especially the millennials. I mean, millennials are too focused on themselves.
Okay.
They're worried about their own lives, and they're selfish. They don't care about future generations or animals maybe, but
Yeah, they care a lot about their dogs.
yeah, but I can't see them worrying a lot about the environment.
Yeah.
I mean, they can say they do, but I think it's they're just repeating what they hear.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole movement's kind of a do what I say, not what I do thing. These politicians and billionaires and millionaires are jetting around to Davos and Paris and having all these summits that only happen because these planes are flying, these private jets are just guzzling fuel. So you're supposed to not take your family vacation, but Al Gore's supposed to be able to charter a private jet and fly halfway across the world to get tea with the Chinese president.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think that's one of the big problems is none of the at the very least none of the celebrities that see it as a problem seemingly buy into it because their actions don't show that they do. So
yeah,
I think that that's kind of a saving grace with the whole thing, but it's really compelling I think for a lot of people when you say that 99% of scientists agree, because most people don't understand science. And in our current culture, we don't really have a religious or moral authority. And I think a lot of people have put their faith and belief in this abstract, science system that they don't really understand.
yeah.
Because, 99% of scientists agreed that the Earth was the center of the universe back back when Copernicus was promoting his theory, and Galileo got jailed because he had a differing opinion about science. But today we're supposed to believe that science is all about consensus and following the herd, when in reality science is about having that crazy idea that turns out to be true.
Hmm.
It's just a basic misunderstanding of the way that the whole system's supposed to work. Not to mention that the whole scientific foundation of reproducible experiments is crumbling. Do you know anything about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Especially in psychology, definitely
Yeah.
a lot of these theories that were developed on on just a few experiments, they're not replicable,
Yeah.
and these theories are just falling apart.
And the problem isn't it's the worst in the humanities and social sciences, but even other fields in more hard sciences are having 30, 40, 50% unreproducible experiments. It's a huge
Yeah.
problem.
Hmm.
And then you combo that with the researchers that put out the fake studies that got past
Yeah.
peer review
Hmm.
with just basically just gibberish,
Hmm.
and they're getting published in prestigious journals with just garbage.
Well, then I wouldn't say they're prestigious. I mean, weren't they like gender studies
I thought that
journals?
there was one or two actual like legit journals, but I could be I could be misinformed on that. So I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
yeah, I could be too, but
here's the thing: as a layman, I have no idea what is or isn't a prestigious journal, so it may have some
Yeah, I
fancy
mean,
name.
there's something called, I forgot what it was called, something factor, where it's like a measure of how good a journal is.
Okay.
I forgot what it was. But anyway.
Yeah. So that's that's it's sad to see how many people just kind of don't do their own research or think for themselves at all.
Mhm.
I'm
It's all,
no what?
it is very easy to fake data and fake your experiments. I mean,
Yeah.
not only like from the fake experience that we're talking about, but as someone who's done research and had access to data and stuff, I could have easily changed things and promoted a theory that I wanted. You know.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, kind of the history of science is littered with different hoaxes and
Hmm.
misinterpreted data and the other thing, the flip side of that is the beauty of science is that it's so easy to to upend previous thinking and kind of overhaul your understanding. It's if you're doing it right, it's set up to allow that to happen easily and effortlessly. The way that you're
Yeah.
supposed to do scientific research and the way that you're supposed to think scientifically, you're supposed to be able to change your beliefs based on the evidence, and I just don't think that the public understands that, and that they live by that at all.
Yeah. And even good science can be wrong
Yep.
sometimes.
Well, Newtonian physics does a spectacular job of explaining movement throughout the solar system and the galaxy and even the universe, but it doesn't quite jive with Einstein's theory of relativity and a few of the things that he predicted. So technically, a lot of his stuff is slightly invalidated. And that was the pillar of science for 100 years, 200 years.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
Well, they can only base it on the best of what's available to them,
Yep. Yep.
using the technology they have and the knowledge that they have. So it's the best that they
Yeah.
could come up with.
Well, and like
So
I said,
even today, the things that we take for granted, um, it could be completely wrong.
yep. Well, one of the things that's been challenged recently by some physicists is the
Flat
very
Earth.
no, the physicists are coming around to that. No, I'm just kidding. No, but one of the things that they've promoted in the last decade is they've been theorizing that the speed of light isn't constant and that it may have changed at some point. And if you talk to a scientist today, that is the bedrock of what they believe is that there are constants, and especially the speed of light couldn't possibly have changed. You know,
Yeah,
because if the speed of light's variable, then what we think we know about our universe is just completely wrong. You know,
interesting.
um,
I would. Hmm. I mean, I'm just hypothesizing it. Maybe it depends on the source of the light.
I don't believe that they were implying that the speed changes based off of the source, and there are actually techniques where we can slow down light with supercooling, and I don't quite understand it, so I'm not gonna try to explain it because I don't fully understand it. But there's ways to get the speed of light to be imperceptibly slower with like lasers and stuff. But what they're theorizing is that the speed limit of the universe was different. Like all light was traveling at a different speed at some point.
Hmm.
Like literally the laws of the universe were different at a certain point. And
Interesting.
I've always been open to that being a possibility. There's
Hmm.
nothing. We don't know anything scientifically that's more than 100, 200 years old. You know, we've only been doing reproducible, observable experiments maybe for 500 years. Like, that's the absolute limit of the amount of time that we've been doing science. So to make the claim that, gravity's always worked exactly this way, to make the claim that light always traveled and worked exactly this way, it's a bit egotistical, to say that. And to believe that it couldn't possibly be otherwise, especially given what we know. And what we know is that science always updates and changes, and our preconceived notions are almost always wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think like once you discover something, you sort of see the whole your whole worldview changes, and you see the whole world as through that theory that you've just discovered. Like, I've always think about this example. It's like when I learned how to type HTML, how to like design web pages with HTML. I thought about like how could I design like a TV using HTML. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing,
Yeah, so powerful.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of irrelevant, but it's good. It might be good science to do that for at least in the beginning part of your discovery. Now, this is true until proven otherwise.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of science teachers, kind of take the easy route and explain things in absolute terms, because it's harder for that, screwball kid to question it. Why does that work? Why is it that way? And it's easy for a science teacher to just say, well, that's just the way it is. That's a law of physics. It can't change. Yeah. Shut up, stupid kid. So
it's an easy answer.
Yeah, so I think that rather than answering with, well, that's the best that we know so far, it could change in the future. That's not an acceptable answer when you're talking about the speed of light.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a flaw in our education system, and
yeah, that's true.
And there may not be a way of eliminating it, but you can always hope.
Yeah, there should be definitely some better training in teachers and educators about not only teaching both sides or all sides, but not being afraid to explain if you don't know something.
Yeah. Yep.
Instead of just coming up with a wacky theory on the spot.
Yeah. There doesn't always need to be an answer to something, and I used to teach astronomy at a 6th grade science camp. I had no problem telling a kid that their question was absurd and didn't make any sense. I was willing to answer the questions that I could, but if I didn't know something, I wouldn't claim to say that I did, or if they asked some completely ridiculous question, you just point it out and be like, hey kid, this is a ridiculous question. Why are you asking me this? and hopefully they learn not to ask ridiculous questions. I feel like a lot of people want to shelter kids from the pain of being wrong or having a wrong idea.
Yeah.
But we just need to point them out and be like, hey kid, that's dumb. Why are you asking a dumb question? You're not dumb. Don't ask dumb questions. And then maybe their questions will get a little better.
Yeah. How did you get that job anyway?
It's a Boy Scout property, and I'm an Eagle Scout, so I just knew people that I had networked with.
You didn't have to like prove your knowledge of astronomy.
No, nothing.
That was
I could have.
What other subjects were they teaching?
There's a lot of history involved. There was a replica of a mine shaft. There's archery and a BB gun range. I worked there a lot. That was mostly what I did. So on the weekends, I'd do archery, BB gun, that kind of stuff. And then during the week, the day that they were doing astronomy, I'd run that program.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What sort of materials did they give you? Did they just let you wing it, or did they give you an outline? Or
so most of the time, I was there kind of around the time that the camp was built. So I actually helped to develop most of the curriculum myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Nice.
I went through the different state standards at the time and developed a curriculum based off that. In the astronomy classes that I had taken, I got straight A's, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I could
Me
prove
too.
that I knew it. It was a lot of fun. I developed a planetary hike. So basically, you take the relative distances of different objects in the solar system and map them out along a trail. So if the sun's here, then all of the terrestrial planets are in this little planter area, and then Jupiter's half a mile away. Saturn's another 2 miles from there, and then Neptune and Pluto are miles away, type of a thing. So that was fun. It's really cool to get to do a lot of the hands-on stuff, where you get to kind of tactily or visually see the way that something is set up. Because you start talking in astronomical units, and people have no idea how big 100 million miles is. If I tell you that the Earth's 100 million miles from the sun, you have no comprehension of that kind of a distance. When at most the furthest you've traveled is 12,000 miles, and that's if you're going halfway across the world. So to try to put that in terms you can understand is difficult, but when you can see that Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars are all right next to each other within 100 million miles of each other, and then Jupiter's 500 million miles away, Saturn's a billion miles away. to put it where you can actually walk that distance and feel how much farther it is, I think is very beneficial. But yeah,
that's really cool.
I was a little bit too ambitious. One of the things I wanted to teach was spectroscopy. Do you know what that is?
No.
So the way that we're able to tell what elements are inside of an extrasolar object like a star is through a process called
The light.
Yeah, so the light that it emits won't have certain bands based off of the elements that are in the star's atmosphere. And so I was going to try to teach the kids a little bit about that. So we got essentially kind of we got a special kind of lamp, and you could put different bulbs in it that represented that had different elements in it. So it would be like neon is one element, and you could look at it through a little projector slide that we had, and you could see the way the spectrum and what was missing and what was there. And it was a little bit too ambitious because I was the only one who could teach it, because I was the only one who understood what was going on. But that was fun.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and as much as I dislike the way a lot of science and a lot of scientists act today, I love the concept of science, and I love learning about the universe and understanding the way that different things work. And it just saddens me that I get called a denier when it's something that I'm just really passionate about. And I'm not denying anything. I'm looking at the facts, and they leave me wanting more evidence,
Yeah. It's a great tool.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. And when you pair it with engineers that can take the information that scientists derive and come up with, an iPhone or a laptop computer or a space shuttle. It's incredible, the fact that we're able to theorize things, develop relatively simple experiments to test them, and then turn it into something so incredibly powerful. Science is probably one of the best tools humanity has, and it's one of the best utilizations of our brain that we've had. It's allowed us to basically cure famine. When's the last time somebody in the United States has worried about whether or not there's going to be enough corn next season, or are we going to have enough food to get through the winter? At this point, it's not a problem of scarcity. It's a problem of distribution for places like sub-Saharan Africa, or different parts of the world that are war torn, and that's why they're experiencing famine. It's not because of a lack of resources. So science has allowed that to happen. That's why we have new grains that can grow ridiculous amounts in small areas, and why Southern California has water. Fortunately, we can live here in the quantities that we can because there's a river that men created 100 years ago that flows from Northern California all the way down here.
Yeah, I thought we got our water from Lake Mead.
Where's Lake Mead?
That's like by Vegas?
So there's a couple different sources. The California aqueduct flows from Northern California, kind of like the Sierras, that area. So we might get a significant amount from there as well, but I think the bulk is Northern California.
Okay.
And you can see the California aqueduct as you're driving up the 5, I believe, crosses in a number of different points. But I mean, that was a spectacular feat of engineering. I know that at one point, going over the Grapevine, they had to develop a crazy pump system that pumps it up and over the mountain because they didn't have the... it wasn't as easy to dig tunnels at that point, so they couldn't dig through the mountain. They had to figure out a way over it. So there's huge pumping stations that pump all of our water up and over a mountain. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I see out in like Rancho Cucamonga, by the mountain, there's some pipes that go into the mountain.
How big would you say the pipes are? How big would you say the pipes are?
I don't know, like pretty big. I don't know. They look pretty big.
Okay.
I never seen them up close. I only seen them like from the freeway and stuff.
Yeah, it like I said, there's a couple other pretty big sources that we get our water from, but the biggest is up north.
Okay.
The dog wanted to come in here and join us. This is my...
Actually, I can't see him right now. I can't see your feet.
Oh, you can't see me at all?
No.
Oh, that's right, because of the way that this is set up. But for everybody else, this is Daisy. She's a Maltese something mix. But she was scratching at the door, so... And now she wants to go. Hi, Daisy. It's my mom's dog, so...
Okay.
Sorry about that, but
right.
Yeah, I just it's sad that the state of discourse the way it is today.
Yeah, definitely.
So we talked a little bit. Do you what do you think the prospects of the Republicans regaining the House or holding the Senate are going to be for 2018?
I had predictions about the past election, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Me too.
yeah,
I
and
had
it sort of didn't, go the way I thought it would be. But I'm learning a lot more about about how that usually happens. Like the first midterm after a new president, um, the House usually switches or something like that.
Yeah, so usually if the president coming in during his presidential cycle, if he brings in a pretty big wave of support and gets control of all three houses, usually it'll switch. Then we get divided government where nothing happens and people just get upset, and then they vote in the president again with their supporters in the House as well. So that's likely what will happen, but who knows? You know, I don't know if he's going to be able to have the broad coalition support to get Republicans elected. Specifically here in Orange County, if our candidates don't run as unabashedly pro-Trump, I think they're going to face the same fate again.
Yeah.
If you like I've hounded on before, if you can't claim any of Trump's successes, then what are you even running on?
Yeah.
What lower taxes? Like, if you're not willing to work with Trump, how are you supposed to get that? So.
Well, I mean, we had some candidates that were unabashedly pro-Trump, and they didn't make it past the primary.
Well, the problem was that the party wouldn't get behind them. They got behind the people that had been kind of anointed to fill the spot. So if you look at what happened, I know the most about just California Congressional District 39. So if you look at what happened there, Ed Royce decided to retire, and he basically handed it off to Young Kim and said, "Here, you take the torch. You're my chosen pick, so you're also the county party's pick. You're going to get all the funds. You're going to get all the resources." And then, of course, she wins the primary, fairly easily. So I don't think that Republicans are going to have as easy of a So I think that what's going to happen in the next cycle for 2020, the Republican candidates that aren't going to be they will. I don't know. Sorry, I'm kind of trying to think this through on the fly. I don't think that so Ed Royce handpicking Young Kim won't mean anything for 2020, if that makes sense. So I think the field's going to be a little bit more clear to have somebody that's got a better campaign to step in. Because like I said, if you just look at the way Young Kim was campaigning, it was terrible. She just wasn't good at the one job you need to be good at as a politician, and that's getting people to put a mark next to your name on the ballot. She wasn't really inspiring, and she wasn't willing to run on any of Trump's accomplishments. So I don't know how she could have won. Not with the money and everything else the Democrats were pouring into the Cisneros campaign.
Yeah, I know. I said on our last podcast that I think Sean Nelson would have beaten Gil Cisneros, and then you said,
"Yep.
Well, anyone who wasn't Young Kim could have beaten Gil Cisneros."
Yep.
I think only Sean Nelson would have, because I think that he came out as the most competent and likable.
Well, I think from what I remember, I qualified that with anybody that would actually support Trump and say that they support him could have won. So if that's Sean Nelson, then for sure. But
I think Bob Huff also was pro-Trump too.
Yeah.
And
I think that they would have stood a better chance. I know that Sean Nelson has actually had a lot of experience campaigning, And I think that he has a bit more of the actual experience that you would need to run a campaign against somebody like Gil Cisneros. I think that young Kim had a lot of the institutional support, and had a lot of friends that are in government and friends at the county party level. But unfortunately, that doesn't translate into actual experience or a winning campaign necessarily. So she just she got hit hard by the Democrats who would link her to Trump with people that hate Trump, and then she distanced herself from Trump, so the people that love Trump didn't like her and didn't show up. It's just a bad way to campaign all around. You unless your district is so solidly against Trump that for a fact that's the way that you have to run, you kind of got to get on board with the president.
Yeah.
Whoever that is at the time, if your party's in power.
Mm-hmm.
If your party's not in power, then you have a lot more leeway to run your campaign the way you want to. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But yeah, I've been doing a little bit I've been looking into the 2020 race. The Vegas bookies still have Trump as the odds-on favorite. I think it's about 3-2 in his favor. And they usually have a pretty good idea of who's going to win something. To be completely honest, I don't think that the Democrats are running their best
candidates. They're not sending their best.
No, I don't think they are.
Well, who would be better? Who would be a Democrat that you would like to see, or who would give Trump the hardest time?
Maybe there just aren't any. Their party's just in such dire straits. If you look nationally, they're at some of the least. They have the fewest positions they've had, from state to state that they've had in a long time. So they're hurting pretty bad for experience. If one of your top two candidates, top two polling potential candidates is someone who's never run for office or even really held much of a job. Michelle Obama polls in a neck and neck heat with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's got legitimately some of the most experience of any politician in Washington D.C., and he's not polling any better than Michelle Obama, who's got some of the least experience of anyone in Washington D.C. So your party's in a pretty bad spot when that's the case. You look at the Republicans, I think there's a lot of superstars that will do fairly well going forward. Ted Cruz is somebody that's not going away. Not that I like him, but Rubio's a pretty strong candidate. He's no slouch. Obviously, we've got our people like Rand Paul, that he's kind of the Bernie Sanders of our party. He doesn't really have much of a chance. But even he's at least a somewhat of a contender, where I don't think, people like Tulsi Gabbard and them are really, actual contenders for their nomination.
Yeah.
But
what do you think about who's the independent running the CEO of Starbucks?
Oh, that's a stunt.
Is this a stunt?
Yeah. So if you look at the timing, all that he came out saying he was potentially running for president at the exact same time that he's going through a book tour for a new book he's trying to hawk. So I'm sure that the book he's trying to sell is gonna do really well, but it was just a stunt to promote his book.
I see.
He can't afford to actually run. Starbucks stock would just tank. If you look at, he hinted and whispered at running, and the Democrats were already talking about boycotting and all these different things. So I don't think he has the actual ability to run. He's going to kind of have to, play it off like he never. He's just gonna. He's not going to run. There's just no chance.
Okay.
Because that would ensure a Trump win. Because there's no way he wins. Because he's more left wing and the Democrats are going to be pissed off at him, and he's not going to steal any votes from Trump. He's basically another billionaire business mogul, so he's not. He's got the same credentials as Trump. So I don't think anybody on the right's going to switch their vote from Trump to him. So because he at the heart of it, he's a leftist. So.
Yeah. Do you want to make a bet on any surprise candidates? Like non-politician candidates?
I don't think there's going to be any, to be honest.
Oh, really?
No.
Not Oprah?
No, definitely not Oprah. If you look at any of the top Democrats, they just have too much to lose. The thing about Trump, he lost some money. I think he went from like a net worth of $4 or $5 billion to a net worth of like $3 or $4 billion. But if you look at what he's invested in, it's real estate. So he can't really hurt his brand by running and either winning or losing the presidency, because the land is still going to be valuable regardless of what name is on it, right? But if you look at like Oprah, if she runs and she has to start taking all these political stances and she gets tied down to, okay, so you do support abortion up to 36 weeks, or I don't know the numbers. I don't even know. Is 36 weeks birth? I don't know. Whatever number is up till birth, and she's got to actually come out and say, I support it or I don't support it. She's just going to upset, her consumers and her viewers. And, she just can't afford to have that happen.
Yeah.
Where, like I said, with Trump, his net worth is tied up in land, which is just going to be more valuable tomorrow than today, regardless.
Yeah, that's true.
Same with the Starbucks CEO. It's the reason why Bill Gates couldn't run for office and Steve Jobs couldn't have run for office. It just forces you to go on record for too many things and be absolute, in your thought process on different things. So,
what about The Rock?
So actors are a little bit more likely, because they don't have the same kind of an empire the way that Oprah does. So, The Rock could kind of get away with it, and not hurt his brand too much. But even then, it might be too much of a risk for even him to be able to run. I was watching this show called Future Man. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't.
It's a Hulu show. It's pretty interesting. But it's about time travel, and there was an episode where they traveled to future. They traveled to the future, and it takes place in California. So it was like 2022 or 2025 or something. And the governor was George Clooney's wife, Amal. So that was kind of an interesting take on what's going to happen, in the future and who they see as potential candidates. And based on what he's been doing, actually, that's not quite as far-fetched as it may sound. So he's been doing a lot of humanitarian work, and so is she. So yeah, I would look to different actors that have been, making themselves more present on the international stage and in the humanitarian front. They're more likely. So George Clooney's a likely candidate at some point for something. I'm just basing it off of celebrities that have gone out and done that kind of stuff. George Clooney, what's her name? Angelina Jolie She adopted a bunch of kids, and then she's been kind of like a I don't know if it's like a goodwill ambassador to Africa, but she's got some kind of a UN title. So any celebrities you see doing that kind of stuff, it's possible that they run for office at some point. Just because they've already put their name out there and attached it to certain ways of certain policies. But anybody like Oprah that's still trying to run a billion-dollar empire or multi-billion-dollar empire can't really afford to go out and upset half their viewers. Because, if at the end of the day, Oprah's viewers aren't all Democrats. So she can't be too pro-Democrat without losing a huge source of her income. So, I've got an early day tomorrow, so I'm about ready to wrap this up. You got anything you want to talk about before we close up?
No, we should probably address why Mikey isn't here.
Oh, yeah, he just had something come up suddenly tonight. I don't quite know what it is. Might be family or work related or something. So he'll be with us at a future date, probably next week. So.
All right. Yeah, I got nothing else on my mind. I think we had a good podcast.
Yeah, it's about an hour, 20 minutes long, so can't complain.
Yeah, especially for just the two of us. That was pretty good.
All right, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Ryan, this is Kevin, and you just listened to Now Granted.